There is a variety of crane types used in industry and construction. Factories and workshops often use cranes or hoists. There are those maintenance jobs or when a load needs moving. Crane and hoist operation is an involved task. One wrong move could damage property or cause serious injury. So only trained and qualified people should operate a crane. This program is not only for crane and hoist operators. If you're a supervisor or working in an area where cranes are used, being able to understand crane procedures will help you identify safe and unsafe practices. Risk is reduced when people are aware of the procedures, limitations and dangers involved with crane and hoist use. This program identifies what can go wrong if a crane is improperly used. Crane Hoists and Slings explains the care people working in the vicinity of a crane can take, how to identify hazards and control risks, identify false slings and equipment, hooks and chains used to lift loads, assess the load to determine what sling to use, and communication signals used during crane operations. Certain cranes are used because they're suited for their work situation. This tower crane has a wide range of area where it can reach and deliver loads. There seems to be no limit to what it can lift. However, every crane has its limits. Limits that are determined by the laws of physics and the other law, work procedure. Most cranes can swivel their boom. Other types, such as this mobile crane, are limited to where the driver can steer. Gantry or overhead cranes don't usually have booms. They move loads using wheels rolling along on rails. A basic type of hoist is the block and tackle secured to a beam. Instead of the hand hoist, electric motorized hoists are often used in industry. A person directing with hand signals is not always required when using a hoist. However, there are those circumstances when working with a banksman, a colleague who assists with the load and directions, is a safer way to work. Some basic hand signals to recognize could be displayed at your workplace. Signalers generally only use one hand to signal. Cranes and hoists are designed to withstand the stress put on them when they lift loads. Every crane has its lifting capacity limits. Competent crane or hoist operators know the maximum load that their equipment can lift and the lifting limits of the slings they use. Don't lift a load beyond the equipment's limits. As you can appreciate, the special skills and knowledge required to operate a tower crane vary compared to a mobile crane. There are various operator certificates of competency that relate to crane types. Operators must complete authorized training programs and attain appropriate competence certificates before they are permitted to operate particular cranes and hoists. The supervisor at this workplace checks that a new employee knows how to safely operate a hoist. Always assess the risks and safety concerns of the work area before commencing a lifting job. Start by inspecting the work area. If you are maintaining a machine or equipment, make sure it is locked off and tagged off. Check overhead to ensure that no work is being carried out that could contribute to a hazardous or dangerous situation. Look around. Are other workers in the area? Make sure they are aware that you are lifting and know not to work too close to the area. Pedestrians should be kept away from the immediate vicinity of a raised load. The consequences of an unsecured load could be fatal. Control measures should be implemented. Placing signs and barriers up to keep pedestrians clear of the area is a safety measure. If you are a pedestrian, choose an alternative route where practical. Don't get too close, especially if the load is raised. Use your best judgment. Be cautious, don't get in the way of a raised load. Be patient and choose a safe approach. The circumstances of every crane lifting job must be assessed. Reduce risk. The general rule is that loads should not be lifted over pedestrians, mobile equipment, dangerous materials and structures where people are present. Check with your supervisor if you're not clear about the situation. What are the workplace safeguards that you should follow when using a crane or hoist in particular areas? Only use a hoist or a crane if you are aware of the manufacturer's operation instructions and capacity limits. Don't start operating equipment before you do a pre-operation check. Is there a maintenance tag on the equipment? The time you take to do a pre-operational check is worthwhile. Is there any obvious damage? Are there any hydraulic leaks? Any parts missing or loose bolts? Are the guards secured? Inspect the wires attached to the winder. Look to see if there is damage or unusual slack. A twisted or a kinked wire like this is unstable and should not be used. Hooks should have a safety latch to prevent the sling from dislodging. If you find a fault during your pre-operational check, don't use the equipment. Report it so it is repaired. Follow the operational checks appropriate to your lifting equipment. The usual procedure is to operate the winder to see if it can raise and lower. Operate each button to ensure they do not stick and that they function. The main function of the hoist up limit switch is to prevent the hook from hitting the carriageway, causing the hoist ropes to overstress. The lower limit switch is to ensure that the drum always has 2 turns of rope on it. This prevents the line from going slack. Listen to any unusual noises or shuddering. If you smell or see any smoke from the motor, then there is something wrong. There is a variety of lifting equipment and accessories available for effective and safe lifting purposes. Ensure you choose the correct slings and attachments after assessing each job's requirements. There are 3 principles that you must apply before slinging the load. Determine the weight of the load, select the appropriate lifting gear and slinging method. Consider the load's shape, its bulk, weight and size. Do not lift any load if the weight is not stated on the delivery docket, the manufacturer's papers, the work order, or if you cannot make a reasonable estimate of the weight. Realize lifting capacities will alter depending on the method of slinging you choose. Use slinging gear that is free from damage. Identify and know the lifting limits, the maximum that slings and equipment are designed to lift. Labels on slings and lifting gear identify their safe working load, or SWL, the maximum working load. Another type of label identifying maximum lifting capacity is working load limit, or WLL. Slings and accessories include FSWR, that is flexible steel wire rope, chains, synthetic and natural fiber slings, and hooks. This sling is damaged and should not be used. Flexible steel wire rope is constructed of wires and strands laid around a central core. It is important not to confuse wires and strands. If a strand is broken, the rope is unusable. A single broken wire is not as important. Look for signs of stretching, kinking, or bird caging, which looks like this. The most common chain used for lifting is 80 alloy steel or grade T. Check that the grade markings on the chain match the grade on the tag. Realize a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The maximum allowable chain wear is 10%. This chain is worn and has been taken out of service. Maintain the life of chains. Do not drop chains from any height, twist, knot or kink a chain, or roll loads over chains. Flat webbing and round synthetic slings are made from both natural and synthetic materials. The slings are color-coded to help identify individual limits. Inspect slings for damage. Look for external cuts and abrasions. Thickening of the sling indicates internal wear. Look for discoloration, an indication of exposure to heat or chemicals. Is the stitching broken? Are end fittings or the eye of the sling damaged? Don't use an unidentified, faulty or suspected faulty sling. Take it out of service. Slings should be stored off the ground in a clean, dry place. coil or hang slings neatly. Store slings away from extreme heat and corrosive chemicals. Keep a logbook nearby so details about maintenance and use can be referred to when required. Never neglect your lifting gear. Describe the slings used at your workplace. How should they be inspected and stored? There are 4 principles to consider when moving a load. Know the weight of the load so you don't lift beyond your equipment's capabilities. Handle the load properly. Choose the proper sling and the best way to secure the load. Aim for a direct lift. You don't want a load with sharp edges or corners cutting into slings, so use lagging to cover sharp points that come in contact with slings. And consider how fragile your load is. You don't want slings to damage the goods you handle. Always aim to lift vertically and maintain the center of balance. If the hook is not positioned directly over the load will sway as soon as it is raised. Make sure your load lifts and lowers straight up and straight down. Loads have fallen when operators thought they were working within the limits. They did not properly consider important factors. The need to balance the load, proper slinging method, and the angle between the legs of slings are important considerations. There are various ways to sling a load. Usually there is a slinging style accepted as the best method to move a load type. Be aware that additional sling legs do not increase the safe working load of the sling assembly. You must assume that only 2 of the sling legs are taking the load. Assess the SWL on diagonally opposite legs. Make sure each leg is evenly distributed with the weight. The recommended maximum angle between the 2 legs is 90 degrees. A general rule for a safe working angle is to ensure that the horizontal distance between the points of attachment of the load does not exceed the length of the slings. This will ensure that the angle between the 2 legs of the slings does not exceed 60 degrees. Position the hook over the load center at a suitable height to connect the lifting gear safely. The center of the hook is designed to take the weight of the load. Avoid sudden jerky movements. Smoothly and gradually raise the load just off the ground. This will also take up any slack. Is your load correctly positioned and safe? If you notice that your load has slid or is slightly off-center, stop and lower the load to re-sling. When your load is stable, continue with the lift slowly and gently in one clear motion until it is high enough to clear all objects in its path. Never leave your load unattended. Be attentive at all times. When traveling with a suspended load, brake and accelerate gently to minimize load swing. When you travel with a load on a mobile hoist or crane, move slowly with your load as close to the floor as possible. Slowly lower the load, decreasing speed near its resting place. Stop the hoist when it is low enough to unhook the sling. Have a chock for the load to rest upon so that the sling can be easily removed. After unhooking your load, raise the hook high. Place the hook well above the heads of people and vehicles so it is safe and not an obstruction. Every hoist and crane operator has a duty of care, not to use faulty equipment, cause damage, or injure anybody. Understand that determining the weight of the load is important. When the weight is confirmed, proper slinging and lifting equipment appropriate for the load can be selected. Realize that pre-operational and operational checks are worthwhile procedures. Competent crane operators follow procedure and know it only takes a damaged sling, inappropriate slinging, or insufficient crane to cause an incident. Lifting a load is a responsible, skillful job, so work the safe way and aim to make every lift a good one.